space for the program in our home Beit Midrash. Welcome. I'm also grateful to Shari Shemayim for providing the Tanakh. I'd ask people to please share the Tanakh and share the source sheets. For this shir, Yael, the accidental assassin, I am grateful to Asher Bani Saban for dedicating the shir in honor of their children, Adam and Yael's recent marriage. No comments on Yael, the accidental assassin, and I just read what's in front of me. Okay, so the story, like the previous one, like what we did with Devorah, is found in the 4th and 5th chapters in Shoftim in Judges. If you're using the Stone Tanakh, it's pages 591 to page 597. Our story takes place, I'm going to recap marginally just because not everybody who was here for this one was here for the previous one. So our story takes place roughly the 12th century before the Common Era, about 160 years after the Jews entered the land of Canaan. Devorah is the Shofet, the 4th of our listed Shoftim. The Jews are mountain inhabitants up north in the land. The Canaanim control the low-lying areas because the Canaanim have chariots that the Jews lacked. We are under the control of the Canaanim, led by a man named King Yavin. This seems to have been a hereditary title. He controls us for 20 years with 900 chariots. We cry out to God. And then, as we read half an hour ago, Devorah orders Barak, saying, Hashem has said it's time for us to go to war. Rally 10,000 troops to Har Tavor. Thank you. Rally 10,000 troops to Har Tavor. Hashem says, I'm going to bring Sisera to you. Sisera is the Canaanite general, and I'm going to put them in your hands. Barak replies, I'm not going. I'm not interested unless you go with me. And Devorah says, okay, but then you will not get glory, as we already talked about. And then there's an important interlude, which I skipped. And that's sentence 11 in chapter 4. We skipped it in the last half hour because it wasn't relevant then. I see the art scroll even puts it in parentheses. It's a really important sentence. This is in the middle of the story. After Barak gets the Jews to climb up onto this, or to go up onto this mountain, well, they're already in the mountains, fine. He gets 10,000 Jews to rally. But before Sisera rallies the Canaanites, here's the sentence. The Chever HaKeni nifrad mikayin. Chever the Keni. Keni. What are Keni? Some kind of Canaanite tribe? Maybe. Descendants of somebody named Keni, who we know from Chumash. Name is Yisro. Right? Yisro, Moshe's father-in-law. So Chever the Keni nifrad mikayin. He's separated away from the Keni tribe. He is a descendant of, here you go, Chovav Chosein Moshe, Moshe's father-in-law, who is named Chovav. He had a surplus of names. Vayet ahalo ad elon b'tzananim asheret kedesh. This is like, for those who follow football, this will have meaning. For those who don't, this has completely meaningless. However, I see a Green Bay Packers fan there, so I know I got somebody. When they're about to hike the ball, each team is lined up. There's one team lined up facing this way. There's one team lined up facing the other way. And then right before that, you see motion. There's a player who goes in motion from one side of the field to the other side of the field, and he's going to matter for the play or as a decoy. That's what happens here. The Jews are lined up here. Barak is lined up there. Not Barak, sorry. Sisera is lined up there. And Chever the Keni is in motion. He suddenly runs from one side of the field to the other. That's literally what he does. He goes from east to west, and we don't know why. We're just told in the middle of the story. That's why they parenthesize it, because it doesn't seem to be at all relevant. He moves over to the west side. He moves over to Kedesh, and then the story just continues. We don't even know when this happened, but it's stuck in the middle of the story, right? It's right there in the middle. Clearly, it's going to matter. So there are two different views. I'm going to do the spoiler and explain that Chever's wife is Yael, who's going to be the critical figure in this story. When Chever moves west, Yael moves west, and she's the one who's going to kill Sisera, the general of Canaan. So there's some debate as to this move from east to west. Abarbanel, which I brought you in source number 2 on the sheet, takes the view that Chever wanted to help the Jews. There's an old history. We're on the same side, Yisro and Moshe and so on down the line. And Chever says, there is trouble brewing. I'm going to see if I can help. And so he picks up his tent at this point in the story and moves west. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is the way that others, including Rabbi, paint it, and that's in source number 3. And he thinks, no, this actually is a completely different point. Chever and the Canaanite are allies of the Canaan. And when they move from east to west, it's a completely random thing that happened long before. It's only mentioned here because it's going to be relevant for the story, but it didn't actually happen now. So 2 different views about when Chever moved, but the move turns out to be pivotal. One view is Chever was trying to help us, and the other view is no, it was a random move. People do that. Okay, the war then begins, which we've already read about. Sisera flees, as we know, and then you get Yael and Sisera. If you turn the page, for those with the Stone Tanakh, to page 593, sentence 17. Yael and Sisera. We have all sorts of questions to ask about Yael, but first let's see the story. So Pasuk Yud Zayin, sentence 17. Sisera runs on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Chever the Canaanite. Remember that, going back to the times of Tanakh, you had different aholot or aholim, different tents. The husband had a tent and the wife had a tent. If you go back to Yaakov and his wives, that's an example of it. So he goes to the tent of Yael, the wife of Chever, because there was peace between Yavin, king of Chatzor, and Chever HaKeni. Sisera thinks he's running to an ally. There are good relations between the Canaanite and the Knaani. Okay, Sisera is again the Knaanite general. Yael goes out to greet Sisera and she says, Surah Adoni, come here, my master. Come here off the road. Don't be afraid. And he goes to the tent and she covers him up in a blanket. Then he says to her, would you give me some water? I'm thirsty. And she picks up a pitcher of milk and she gives him milk to drink, and then she covers him up again. We're going to talk about the milk, obviously. He says to her, stand at the entrance to the tent. If anybody comes and asks you whether there's anybody here, you should say, there is nobody here. Different explanations in the commentaries. The straightforward thing is say, I'm not here, right? But he says, don't say there's no one here. So Malbim suggests no one's going to enter if she's alone. So therefore, he says, tell him that nobody is here at all. Sentence 21. Yael, the wife of Chever, takes a tent peg, takes a hammer, comes to him secretly, smashes the peg into his head, and batitznach ba'aretz, jumps down with all her weight. Batitznach, like tzanchanim, right, like a paratrooper. She jumps down to weigh down the tent peg. Hu nirdam, he was sleeping. Vaya'av vayamot, and he died. She kills Sisera by stabbing him through the head. And then, sentence 22, Barak, finally, huffing and puffing, catches up to Sisera. Yael goes out to greet him, and she says to him, Lech ve'areka es ha'ish asher ata mevakesh. I'm going to show you the man you are looking for. Vayavo eleha, Barak goes, V'hinei Sisera nofel meis vayaseh Barak aso. And lo and behold, Barak finds that Sisera is dead on the ground. This story becomes relevant later on in history because the story of Judith ends up including very serious elements of this story. This is not the time for a discussion of the story of Yehudit, of Judith, but I brought you a little piece of it in source number 4 from one standard translation where Judith executes Holofernes, the general of some army that was attacking us, Assyrian, Babylonian, Greek, whatever, that's its own discussion. But you see the same ingredients to it. She gets into his tent, and there it's his tent. She chops off his head, and then she brings back the head to show everybody what she has done. That's all one version of the story. However, there's more detail that we're missing, but Devorah fills it in her poem. In chapter 5, so if you jump to the bottom of page 595, chapter 5, sentence 24, you get Devorah's description of what happened with Yael, and boy, does it add details. Sentence 24, she first of all says, Tivorach minashim Yael eshet Chever. Well, before that, the sentence preceding that, actually 23, she curses those who did not come to our aid. Then she blesses Yael minashim, from women. Minashim ba'oel tivorach. She should be blessed from the women of the tent. I'm going to come back to that phrase later on. Sisera, Mayim Sha'al. Sisera asked for water. Chalav Natana, and she gave milk. And the idea of him asking for water and her giving milk means what to us? Puts him to sleep, right? That's the image. Actually, I taught this story once before, and someone in the class suggested that it's a maternal image. She covers him with a blanket, she gives him milk, and then she kills him. I knew that story had a problem somewhere. But she gives him the milk, and the idea is to put him to sleep. And it's a big trough, seifel adirim. This is a trough for mighty people that she gives him. So Yadala Yasei Tishlachna. She extends her hand to the tent peg. She takes the hammer in her right hand and she smashes it into his head. Pasuk Chav Zayin, sentence 27. Bein ragleha karan nafal shachav. So I'm going to translate this right now the way they translate it in the art scroll, which is at her feet. He knelt, he fell, he lay. At her feet, he knelt, he fell. Where he knelt, there he fell, vanquished. That's the way that the art scroll chooses to translate it. However, the Gemara in Nazir Chav Gimel Amud Beis, I did not bring it on the sheet, but the Gemara here says that's not what we're talking about here. When the text says Bein, it doesn't mean at her feet, it means between. And what it's talking about is in fact rape. That's what's going on, and that's how Sisera falls asleep. In other words, Sisera abuses Yael, and then he collapses afterwards, and that's when she kills him. And as the Gemara reads this, in source number 5, the Gemara says that she actually draws him into it. When she comes out of the tent and lures him into the tent, she comes up with this plan. This is what she expects to do. And the Gemara reads this seduction as what's called Avera Lishma, a transgression technically to seduce him, but it's lishma, it is altruistic. It is for God's sake. And as the Gemara spells out in source number 5 on your sheet, the part that I did bring, it says that this is equated with a mitzvah. The Gemara discusses it like an altruistic mitzvah, like a selfish mitzvah. That's not the point for right now, but it reads it as praiseworthy. Not everybody believed that this is what happened. Reish Lakish in the Midrash in source number 6 in Vayikra Rabbah says absolutely not. He says, God forbid, it can't be so. There is no way. He says, as the end of that Midrash says in source number 6, Shalo Nagaba Oso Rasha, this wicked one did not touch her. Okay. But what you get here in this story certainly deepens our understanding of what's going on. If I take the view of the Gemara in Nazir, it for sure gives me an added understanding of what happened here. And Devorah in her song praises Yael, but now I want to go backward in the song to chapter 5, sentence 2. So we're now back on page 593. And a word that I noted in the beginning. Devorah speaks repeatedly about the importance of volunteering, seeing a need and filling it, so that in sentence 2, we already said, Behisnadev when the nation volunteered. In sentence 7, she says, Ad shakamti Devorah, until I arose. In sentence 9, she talks about Chokikei Yisrael, the leaders of Israel, Hamitnadavim ba'am, who volunteered among the nation. Jumping to sentence 13, she speaks about Hashem volunteering to get involved. Hashem Yerad Liba Giborim, Hashem empowering our remnant in sentence 13. And then she goes through a list in sentences 14 to 18, which tribes volunteered to join and which tribes sat it out and said, we're not so interested. Remember that one of the principal problems the Jews encounter in the period of the judges, the period of the Shoftim, is the sense that we're no longer one nation. When we spread out in the land, we're decentralized. People even start to feel perhaps closer to their neighbors, Canaan, than they do to the Jewish people as a whole. Right? This is a problem throughout Jewish history. People who felt a closer kinship to their neighbor than they did to the Jew who lives halfway around the world. That's what she speaks about. So in sentences 14 to 18, she takes to task those who did not join in. And then she presents a powerful contrast. Look at Pasuk Yutet, sentence 19. She says, you want to know who volunteered? Ba'u malachim nilchamu. Kings came and fought. Az nilchamu malchei Canaan. You want to know who fought? The kings of the Canaanites fought. They joined into Yavin's war against us. The Betza Kesef Lo Lakachu. They didn't even take any money for it. Right? Think Achashverosh and Megillas Esther. You can keep the money, right? He says to Haman. That's what the Canaanim did. She says, you Jews from your different tribes who sat it out could have taken a lesson from the Canaanim because they joined in to fight and they refused any payment for it. Now you might say, well, they didn't deserve any payment because they lost, but you get the idea. That's not her point. Not only that, sentences 20 and 21, she says, Min shamayim nilchamu. You know who else fought? The stars fought, in this case on our side. The Wadi of Kishon, which flooded in order to catch the wheels of their chariots, they volunteered. Nature volunteered to fight on our side. The only ones who didn't are the tribes, the Shvatim, who sat it out. Canaan are volunteering. Sure. Nature is volunteering. Hashem obviously volunteered. And who didn't? These tribes listed in sentences 14 to 18. They're the ones who don't who don't volunteer. And the kicker, the one who is highest of all, is the one she praises at the end of her poem, as we read earlier, and that is Yael, wife of Heber the Keni, the one who volunteered at the right time in order to execute the enemy general and prevent them from being able to regroup. That's the one who we look at. Our theme is the accidental assassin who volunteers when the opportunity surprisingly arises. She has every reason not to get involved, right? Go back to chapter 4, sentence 17. We said, why did Sisera run there? Ki shalom ben Yavin melech Hatzor ubein beis chaver HaKeni. Because there was a pact. There was peace between the Keni and her husband Chever. Commentators asked, why isn't she worried about repercussions for violating this pact? So you could say, well, Emunah, she believed, not concerned. The Malbim suggests that the Keni were actually Jewish, right? That's a problem in terms of the lineage of the Keni. Yisro in Parshas Baaloscha wants to leave the Jews. Moshe tries to convince him to stay. We don't get an end of the story. It doesn't say whether he stayed or did not stay. It seems like they're not Jewish because later on in our history, we actually find, I wanted to see if I have it. Yeah, I'm going to come back to it later on. So I'll get back to the evidence in a little bit. But first, in terms of the pact between us and the Keni, so some argue that Yael isn't worried about any problems because the deal that the Keni have with the Knaani was a deal with the Keni as a whole. And maybe Chever, by moving away, is exempt from the pact. Alternatively, Abarbanel suggests maybe the alliance was not with Sisera, the general, but only with Yavin, the king, and therefore no allegiance is owed to him. You even have a view, which is put forth by Abarbanel, that Yael is exempt from the pact because she's female, so she's not responsible to the treaty. Maybe, but now I come back to the question of whether Yael is even Jewish. As I said, the conclusion of Yisro's involvement with Moshe and the Jews is very unclear. Malbim believes that Yisro converts to Judaism and his family converts to Judaism. But it's very difficult to say that. I gave you two references in source number 10 on your sheet. The first one is a story from Shoftim, not a story, a verse, a pasuk from Shoftim in the first chapter, in which we are told that the Keni are living outside the city of Jericho, when we enter the land. Right? And they're identified as Keni. They're not identified as Jewish. Right? It didn't say there were Jews living outside Yericho. It said there were Keni living outside of Yericho. It's hard to think that we're identifying them that way when they are Jews. But even stronger, in Shmuel Aleph, chapter 15, Hashem says to Shmuel to go tell Shaul to go to war against Amalek. Before going to war, Shaul sends a message to the Keni, who are living among Amalek, saying, Suru redu mitoch Amaleki. Leave the Amaleki lest you be caught up with them. You were so kind to us. Ki asisa chesed, you were kind to us when we left Egypt. And the Keni say, okay, we're moving out of the way. But tell me something. if Shaul is able to say to the Keni, you're living with Amalek, we're about to go to war there, you'd better get out of the way. What's the implication for if they don't get out of the way? They're going to get killed, right? That's what we expect to have happen next if they don't move out of the way. If they're Jewish, can that be? Shaul says to a group of Jews, you're living among Amalek, if you don't move, we're just going to kill you? I have a very hard time accepting that. Not to mention, I have a very hard time accepting the idea of a tribe of Jews living with Amalek. Of all the people, right? Seriously? It's very hard to support the idea that the Keni are Jewish. It seems more likely that she's not. And the reason I emphasize it is because despite all of this, despite the fact that there is a treaty of some kind between Chever's family and the Knaani, and again, Chever may be in on this. He may have moved in order to set this up or not. That we don't know. But Yael violates a treaty. She may not even be Jewish, and therefore, really, she has no horses, so to speak, in this battle. If she does, then they're Knaani horses for sure. And she suffers at the hands of Sisera. And again, whether you're going to read that text to say that she suffers in this ultimate way or not, fundamentally, she's putting herself in a position of danger, and it seems to be an in-the-moment decision. Because even if Chever moved there thinking that they're going to be able to help, there's no way he knows that this is the way it's going to play out, that the Jews are actually going to be winning the war, and that Sisera is going to flee. That's not what Chever is thinking when he moves there to try to help the Jews. You can't expect that. She steps up in the moment, and she volunteers. And by the way, who else did not volunteer for that war? Well, the Shvatim, but aside from them, Barak, right? Barak, who when told to go said no, right? So here you have your male-female divide, right? Barak was told to go and said, not unless you go. Sisera was the general of the Knaanim, and he fled in the opposite direction of his troops. Devorah is the one who leads the Jews to go out to war. And Yael, who isn't even a Jew and has no stake in this, volunteers to execute Sisera. And she is praised in the highest terms. Go back now to chapter 5, sentence 24, please, on page 593. Not that one. Sorry, page 595, chapter 5, sentence 24. Tevorach mi nashim Yael eshes Chever HaKeni. The key letter here is the letter mem. Tevorach mi nashim. When the letter mem shows up as a prefix to a word, it's flexible. Sometimes mem means from, as in from this, coming from this. So if I wanted to say this Tanakh came from Sharei Shamayim, I would say came mi Beit HaKnesset Sharei Shamayim. The mem meaning from. But that isn't the only meaning of the letter mem. The letter mem can also mean more than something else. So I could say, hu gadol mechaveiro. He is greater than or taller than the person next to him, than his friend. The mem meaning more than the next one. The mem is flexible, can mean a few different things. And in fact, when it says here, Tevorach mi nashim, the commentators give us a range of explanations. Rashi takes the simple view. She is blessed among the women of the tents. So take a look at source number 11. Rashi says, talking about the original women of the tents, meaning Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, Rashi says they birthed and raised children, and if not for Yael, these wicked ones would have come destroyed them. Rashi's quoting a Midrash. Alternatively, Yael was also a dweller of tents, and it mentioned her with the blessing of the tents, but she's blessed among the women of the tents. I'm sorry, I mixed two things in this Rashi. That's what happens when you prepare too many classes and you forget the ones that you prepared first. Rashi's saying two different things. The second point that Rashi made is actually the one I said first, which is that she is blessed among the women of the tents. The second point, which Rashi makes in his first point, is that she is praised by the women of the tents, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, because she protected their children. So make sure we're being clear. Either she is praised by the women of the tent for saving their descendants, or she is a woman in a tent and she is blessed among the women of the tents. Abarbanel takes the view also that she is praised by the women of the tent, but he ups the ante a little bit. He says, welcoming Sisera into her tent isn't the sort of thing that a nice Jewish girl would do. And therefore, she might be up for criticism. Take a look at source number 12. The private women in the tent might be outraged. In other words, Devorah is speaking to a Jewish nation, which includes women who are going to say, how could you do that, Yael? How could you welcome him into your tent? And Devorah is saying, no, tivorach minashim. She should be blessed by those women. They should bless her and not criticize her. That's the read of Abarbanel. And then finally, Ralbag, who says, source number 13, Omnam Yael tia brucha. Yael should be blessed. Ki azra lamerigat Sisera, because she helped kill Sisera. V'yoter minashim shehein ba'ol tevarech. She deserves more praise than the women of the tent because of the key role that she played. So we have a range of different views to explain her blessing. Blessed by the women of the tent, blessed among the women of the tent, blessed more than the women of the tent, but she is certainly singled out for unique praise for what she did. And interestingly, go back for a second to chapter 5, sentence 6, where Devorah said, in the days of Shamgar ben Anat. Shamgar ben Anat is the shofet, the judge before Devorah. In the days of Shamgar, in the days of Yael, people could not walk the roads. Some commentators on that pasuk are puzzled. Why did you mention Yael alongside Shamgar? It's weird. And they give the answer that Yael is considered a quasi-shofet, which she's not in this technical sense. Meaning all the lists of the shoftim, no one lists Yael as one of these shoftim, but they're making a statement about the way Devorah views her because of what she did. Now, the Gemara called this Avera Lishma. It called this, reading it with the Gemara's read of what happened with Sisera, it called it an altruistic sin. Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Netziv, unpacked that idea. And what he said was the following. He said, before we had a Torah, when Jews are living in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, the only thing we could do to serve God was to try to figure out what Hashem wants and do whatever it is altruistically, lishma. That was all you could do, other than this Sheva Mitzvah Noach. You have Noachide laws, that's it. However, once we get a Torah, we're not allowed to create mitzvos anymore. Now we have instructions. We have things that we're supposed to do. And to do something that violates that is an Avera. However, writes the Netziv. The Netziv is found, I thought I brought it on the sheet, but I see that I did. The Netziv is found on the pasuk V'lo sasur rachrei levavchem v'achrei yinechem, the end of Parsha Shlach in Sefer Bamidbar. But what the Netziv says is, sometimes you encounter a situation where you have to go back to that pre-Egypt, to the pre-Sinai model. Sometimes you don't have another option. And that's what Yael encountered. She knew what the moment called for. She saw that there were no other options. It wasn't planned. And that's the point. You're not allowed to plan for an Avera Lishma. It only is acceptable because it was the only thing she could do when she was the one on the spot. That's the way the Netziv reads the story. But the fundamental lesson for us from, again, this is just half an hour on a story that deserves a lot more time. But when opportunities for greatness come to hand, we seize them. She was the accidental assassin, but she was the one who, through that accident, ended up saving the Jewish people back in that time. There's much more to be said, but in 1 minute, we are going to start our next shir. The next one is Delilah, the traitor. There are more sheets being given out. Stay tuned for 1 moment.